Welcome back to Big Riff Energy. Today we're doing a good old-fashioned tier list ranking of every Ghost release. As we know, they put out a new single, The Future is a Foreign Land. We'll be cracking into that. If you're new to the channel and here for the Ghost content, stick around because I'm going to be recommending two older albums from the 80s for fans of Ghost and two newer albums from the 2020s. Also for fans of Ghost. I've been a listener and a fan of this band since day one. Lately, it's been a little hit or miss for me. I do love the new song. I do love and respect Tobias Forge's songwriting and riff writing ability. And that's what this show is all about, is riffs and songs and doing cool stuff. And he definitely does that. So, let's start from the top, shall we? First album, 2010. I think I heard it in early 2011, Opus Eponymous. This is still my favorite album. I remember when these guys were buzzing around the metal underground. Have this pressing here. Rise Above pressing. I believe this was done for Maryland Death Fest 2011, which I think was their first trip to the States. I could be wrong. I did not refresh or do any research for this episode, but I'm pretty sure this is worth a little bit. But it's my favorite Ghost album. I will not be getting rid of it anytime soon. Yeah, I started listening to metal at a very young age and got into extreme stuff at a very young age. So by the time Ghost came around, they reminded me sort of, they get compared to like Merciful Fate and King Diamond and Blue Oyster Cult and stuff like that. I get it. I feel like they, even when I was first getting into them on the first album, which I would say is like the most metal, I guess, it still reminds me more of like 70s and 80s AOR and FM classic rock radio type stuff. And maybe early Ozzy and stuff. It borders into what I would consider metal. The aesthetic is definitely metal. The lyrical content is definitely metal. We could have that debate all day long. Are they a metal band? Are they not a metal band? Here's the thing that appealed to me. Good riffs, good songs, good vocals, good playing, hooks, guitar hooks, vocal hooks, drum hooks even. Boom, da da da, boom, boom, da 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 da. That's a drum hook, man. They play it over and over and over in that whatever ritual, I think. Yeah, just hooks, man. The band I was in at the time, we were all really into these guys. We were sort of captured by the mystique of who's in it. I remember people conjecturing like, oh, it's Eric from Watain, and rumors flying around on the internet. It was a fun time watching this band come out of nowhere and become this, overnight phenomenon, really. So yeah, I'm okay. Opus Eponymous, let's put it S tier, top tier. For those of you unaware of the Gen Z tier ranking system, S is the top, which whatever. Okay, album number 2 from 2013, Infestissumam. I liked this when it came out. I remember this album has like a very special place in my heart. The band I was in at the time, which I just mentioned, we actually got to be direct support to Ghost while they were kind of in the process of blowing up off of this album. I think it was as the album was being released, if I remember correctly. And we got to play with them in Phoenix. And I remember Tobias particularly being very friendly. And oddly enough, I feel like he was the most accessible person in the band and spoke to us. I remember talking about like Rosemary's Baby or Polanski or something like that. So that's a very fond memory that I have relating to the time of Infestissumam coming out and everything. And I liked it at the time. I revisited this album a couple years ago, and I have to say I wasn't feeling it. I don't feel like it had the songwriting chops of the first album. It was like when I hear it now, it comes across as like a little scatterbrained or unfocused. And yeah, just a little all over the place. I don't like the production as much as the first one. And I was very disappointed that it didn't hold up like I hoped it would. So, hate to do it, Infestissumam, C tier, despite the fond memories of that time. Yeah, the next EP I sort of feel similarly about if you have Ghosts. I'm a huge Rocky Erickson fan. Obviously, Tobias is as well. Didn't feel super necessary to me, just sort of felt like some content to ride the wave of the release of the second album and everything that was going on. So I'm going to put that C tier as well. Breaking my own heart here. 2015, third album, Meliora. I remember loving this one, and this one does hold up. It's sort of, to me, it's more of a direct progression from the first album. Like the second album, that seemed like they were trying different stuff, especially with a song like Zombie Queen, a little much. I remember everybody loving that song when it came out, and now it's like, seems a little like Weird Al Disney kind of shit. But Meliora is cool. Is it evil again, like very evil. The strength of this band to me is similar to the appeal of like the early Misfits stuff, where, you know, Danzig would write these basically pop songs, 3 chords, 4 chords, pop songs, verse, chorus, hooks, beautiful. He's singing like Elvis or Roy Orbison or something, but he's singing about murder and death and ripping bodies apart and raping people and killing people. And so it's like the dichotomy of the poppy, catchy, fun sound and the really brutal lyrical content that's so fun and appealing with a band like the Misfits. And with Ghost, I think it's sort of the same. You know, he's singing about some pretty evil and provocative topics, you know, King Diamond type stuff. But it's presented, you know, a song like He Is presented almost as like a Christian like hymn or something, but it's all about the devil. I love that. Meliora is full of that. So I'm going to put that album B tier. It's a great album. I still like it a lot. 2016, we have another EP. This time it's Popestar. You know, Square Hammer to me, again, we could sit here and debate all day long about whether Ghost is a metal band or not. Who really cares? Obviously, they came out of the metal subculture. You know, their early stuff was released by Rise Above. It's about as metal as you get. Lee Dorian, right? Square Hammer, it would be a stretch to call that a metal song, but I will say I think it's one of the best songs ever written, for my money. For what I want in a song, for what I like in a song, I love it. And Tobias has done quite a few interviews talking about the songwriting process there. And one of my favorite things he's discussed is his imaginative idea for this quote unquote band when he was forming Ghost, which is for all intents and purposes just him, right? But he was able to sort of create this vision of 70s band, but they're a little bit older. The guys in the band are in their 30s, which means they were playing music in the 60s a little bit, and now they're playing music in the 70s. And there's one guitarist that's real dumb, big, heavy, evil, one-note Black Sabbath riffs. And there's one guitarist that's smarter. So he's playing more like Alex Lifeson or somebody, like smarter chord voicings and movements, maybe even sort of more like Beatlesy, you know, sort of left field chord choices and open drone strings and stuff like that. And Square Hammer to me exemplifies everything that's appealing about a band like Ghost musically. When you strip away all the pomp and excess and the costumes and the stage show and stuff like that, the thing that's different about this band is Ghost has really good, moving, meaningful songs. Even if surface level, the lyrical content can be kind of like amusement park haunted house type shit, or, you know, 70s satanic panic type stuff. At its core, Ghost is a band with great songs. And Square Hammer is the best Ghost song in my book. And really, the rest of the EP, even though it's covers, is insane. It's like some of my favorite stuff they've ever done. That song Bible is a lot of fun. I'm going to put Popestar A tier for sure. Okay, 2018, we have Prequelle. I like this album a lot, still do. I've got a really crazy tour memory tied to the saxophone solo when a ghost phantom truck driver tried to kill me and my whole band. So I always think about that when I hear the sax solo. But I like this record a lot. Yeah, B tier. I'm going to put it up there with Meliora. Those are kind of similar appeal for me. Fast forward to 2022, we have the album Impera. I will admit I didn't maybe give this, and I'm skipping the single. I don't really care about the Mariana Cross, whatever, 7 inches of Satanic Panic. Clever name, clever song name, clever single name. But yeah, I'm gonna skip over that. Impera, I gave it a shot. I think I gave it a couple shots. There's some moments that I like. There's some moments of like 80s, like boom, 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 and you know, guitar harmonies and stuff. I was like, oh shit, cool. That's a lot of fun. That's heavy. It's, you know, I didn't like it though. Overall, it felt to me like it was rushed or disorganized or unfocused. You know, Tobias for the past, I don't know how many years, has had a songwriting team that's sort of shifted and stuff like that. So I'm not going to blame him entirely, but I feel like in the past he's been pretty clever with the, you know, double meaning type lyrics, double entendre type lyrics, and sort of borderline like pun type humor in like an evil way, you know? And there's some attempts at those sort of like, you know, in Spinal Tap, they say there's like a fine line between stupid and clever. And a lot of the best like metal type bands and rock bands walk that line. But the lyrics on Impera are just, to me, like too far into stupid territory. It doesn't, you know, I think that this album appeals to maybe like quote unquote normal people. By that, I mean like non-metal people. I think maybe that was the goal, was to expand a little bit. I get it, but to me, it's just nothing that's appealing to me about the first album or the Popestar EP or anything like that. It just ain't there. It's not clicking. I don't like it. I might try it again after you guys yell at me in the comments. Impera is going D tier. Hate to tell you. I just didn't like it. And mainly, you know what, man? Mainly it was kind of the lyrics. It was the music too, but usually I can like kind of overlook lyrics, but some of them were so stupid that it was taking me out of the experience completely. Phantom Mime, I think I gave it a listen. Again, this is coming from a dude who has put out like a covers EP with a couple originals on it, kind of like their Popestar EP. So I'm not hating on it, but it just felt a little unnecessary. D tier. You know what? As I'm looking at this, I think I'm gonna move Meliora and Prequelle to A tier. So clearly I'm split. There's kind of an extreme divide here, and it's almost like every other kind of thing, which is weird. It brings us to their new song, "The Future is a Foreign Land," which I love. You know what? I would put that song. I would put that song in A tier. And really, the only reason the Popestar EP isn't in S tier is because it's mostly covers. I just feel like it kind of disqualifies it, you know. So that's it. Yeah. You know, I'm making MMA analogy because I'm an MMA fan and I always make MMA analogies. Ghost is kind of like Conor McGregor. I'm like an MMA diehard, and Conor, some diehards get frustrated because Conor McGregor is like this mainstream guy. But even as a diehard, it's like when he does something, whether you love it, hate it, you have to care. You almost don't have a choice. Like anytime that dude does anything, it's sort of like an event for that whole community, I feel the same way about Ghost. Like as a diehard, lifelong metal fan and metal musician and songwriter and riff writer and stuff, obviously there's way more underground bands that are, more significant to someone with the kind of taste that I have or whatever. But anytime Ghost does anything, I find myself like, I have to pay attention. And I'm a fan, I'm not a Ghost hater by any means. I think that it's, no matter what you're into, I think it is beneficial to everyone in a community when there's a phenomenon like that crosses into the mainstream, especially when it has artistic merit, and then Ghost is taking a band like Tribulation on arena tours, or a band like Uncle Acid on arena tours. Tobias came up out of the underground and he gives back to the underground, and it's good. It's good. I would never hate on that ever, despite putting a couple of the albums in the D tier. But the new song to me has the same appeal as like the first album or Square Hammer or something like that. They're leaning, into the late 60s shtick a little harder than the first album. The first album to me was 70s going into 80s. This new single is sort of 60s going into 70s, obviously. But hooks, man, it is so hard. It's easy to write like really tricky, clever riffs, that are like fun to play as a guitar player, entertaining to other guitar players or something like that. It's hard to write hooks that get stuck in your head no matter who you are. That is an art form that's on a totally different stratosphere than writing like a metal song or a metal riff or whatever. And Ghost has some of the hookiest songs ever written in rock music or hard rock music or metal music or whatever you want to call it. I love the new song. It's also a lot more like profound than a band like Ghost has any right to be. It's it almost feels like it's important, which is kind of crazy that a dude wearing satanic Pope outfit or satanic sexy 1920s guy outfit is making songs that feel sort of urgent, socially, spiritually, if you will. So I like it a lot. I'm still a Ghost fan. I'll probably always be a Ghost fan. But for my money, I'll always prefer the first record, I think. We'll see what happens. If this new song is indicative of where they're trying to go with another record, I'm sure I'll dig it. But right now, the first record stands alone, S tier. So Ghost gets compared to, especially when they were first coming out, like Merciful Fate and King Diamond and Blue Oyster Cult and all this stuff. And I don't really hear King Diamond or Fate, to be honest. To me, even on that first album, they reminded me a lot more of just 70s and 80s classic rock, hard rock, stuff that I heard on FM rock radio growing up, maybe early Ozzy and stuff like that. But to me, it's got more in common with like the first Boston album than it would have with the first Merciful Fate album. So I'm going to recommend a couple older things here, one of which is kind of like, you probably have heard of them, one of which maybe you haven't. But there's an 80s Alice Cooper record here behind me. I think it's 1989, called Trash. And Tobias has acknowledged like Uriah Heep influence in certain things, Cheap Trick, that sort of thing. I've never personally heard him talk about Alice Cooper Trash specifically. And I love early Alice Cooper. The guitar work is awesome. The harmonies, the riffs, everything like that. Again, we have a dude who's like got theatricality and a stage show and everything like that. But if you took it all away, you still have great songs. Trash is like very late 80s. It's very gated reverb, digital, analog world transitioning into digital, 80s transitioning into 90s. But if you listen to a song like Poison or even Bed of Nails from this album, especially Poison, man, if you're a fan of Ghost and you haven't heard this Alice Cooper record, listen to Poison, the Alice Cooper song, not the band. Watch the video. It's pretty cool. Dude, to me, that song sounds exactly like Ghost. It's like the whole template for the band Ghost. And it came out in 1989. So as I said, I've heard a lot about Uriah Heep and Merciful Fate and stuff like that being touchstones for Ghost music. But to me, Poison from the album Trash by Alice Cooper just like invented it in 1989. Below this album, we have a record which I believe was originally recorded in 83. I have the High Roller Records repress, great label from Germany. Check them out, love them. All their stuff rules. I didn't even realize this was High Roller Records until I took it down from the shelf today. We have Ashbury. What's the record? Endless Skies. I do all this shit on the fly. I couldn't think of the name of the album. But yeah, Ashbury is for fans of like Jethro Tull, old Fleetwood Mac, old Blue Oyster Cult. If you like Ghost and you are unfamiliar with sort of like 70s, 80s hard rock, prog rock, AOR, but sort of on the more underground side, definitely check out Ashbury, Endless Skies. You'll hear some similarities with Ghost for sure. I love the song Madman. The whole record's good though. Criminally underrated band. They sort of have made a comeback in more recent years, playing some of the like traditional European metal fests and stuff like that. For two newer records, if you guys don't want to listen to old people music, but you want to listen to new music that sounds like old people music, 2022, another band from Sweden, Hallas, released a record called Isle of Wisdom. Definitely my favorite record of that year. One of my favorite albums of the decade, quite possibly one of my favorite rock and roll, prog rock, weird, proto metal, proto hard rock albums ever made, for sure. It's there's not stuff this good coming out. It's very few and far between these days that a timeless classic record is being dropped with a timeless classic production and really remarkable, compelling vocals and synth, and everything that you love about Ghost is present on this album. If it's about the music for you, it might not be. One of the other appeals of Ghost that I think has allowed them to cross sort of more into the mainstream, it just dawned on me listening to this new song and like reading comments and sort of half-ass getting ready for this episode. People sometimes want like a fantasy world to live in, whether that's like a long play video game, open world type of video game, or being obsessed with like the Star Wars universe or Disneyland or Comic-Con or whatever. And I'm kind of that way with like horror movies and maybe like comic books to a certain extent. I'm sort of a casual comic book guy, so I get it for sure. But I saw so many people reacting to the new Ghost song, talking about like how their granddad played it for him and he used to go see him in 1969 and stuff. So people in the comments are like playing along with this manufactured universe that Tobias has created. And I get it, I'm not really that way with music. I just kind of like the music and the lyrics and stuff like that. But who am I to say that those have to be two separate things? I think it's a nice thing to do for people in this day and age, to give them like a full 360 degree escape from reality. Hallas doesn't quite do that. They have capes and shit, but which I'm like, I don't know, go all the way or don't, man. What's up with the fucking cape? But the tunes are sick. If you like Ghost, you'll like this Hallas album, Isle of Wisdom. And then I have one more recommendation. Came out last year from the UK, Wytch Hazel, with the album Sacrament. Yeah, fourth album. It's my favorite Wytch Hazel album. And if you're a fan of Ghost because you're like die hard into Satanism, you may not like it. But if you're a fan of Ghost because of the tunes and the guitar hooks and the vocals and stuff like that, you'll probably like it. These guys are Christian version of Ghost, except I think that they actually are Christians and believe in Christianity. Whereas I think Tobias is sort of in that gray area of like, Satan represents freedom type of thing that so many of us have been through. So if Satan really represents freedom, then you should be free to listen to a Christian band that is sonically appealing in the same way as Ghost. So I strongly recommend those two records for some newer stuff that is in the same vein. And hopefully Ghost will continue to get more successful, keep taking bands like Tribulation on tour, keep taking bands like Uncle Acid on tour. And yeah, that's it, man. I'm a fan. No matter if they make music that I'm into or not into, I respect it wholeheartedly. And I think it's great when a band with good songs and good players and good riffs gets big. You know, one last comment on the new single. I noticed this phenomenon, and I think it's just my own personal taste. Something that happens with some of their songs is when the vocals start, I don't like the vocals. And it's like a little too shaky or weird, or he's finding his nasally sort of timbre or finding the notes. And then once the second line starts, or the second verse, or however you want to look at it, it seems like he's finding it more easily, and then it's smooth sailing from there. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is good. But I found myself feeling that way with a new song. When the vocals started, I was like, ew, I kind of cringed a little bit. But something that happens when you're in the studio recording vocals is there's like a sweet spot between being warmed up and being tired. If you start tracking and you're not like quite warmed up enough, you'll get halfway through the song and you realize, oh man, my voice sounds better now than it did when we first started recording. So a lot of times what I'll do is record like a whole song worth of vocals, maybe doubling it to get to the end. And then we go back and listen to the first line and it's like, Jesus, like it's in that context, it's not as good. And usually, you know, this is kind of a newer revelation for me within the last few years. And usually what will happen is we go back, re-record just like the first verse or first couple lines of the song, and then it all is kind of the same quality, which again is just like a matter of preference. But I do think that there's something maybe a little more courageous or a little more genuine or something about, you know, it sounds to me like when he's recording vocals, he just gets to where he's feeling good and then records it and leaves it. And so when you're listening to it, it does sound a little bit shaky coming out the gate and a little weird. And then it gets better. And that's how, you know, that's how human beings perform when they're singing a song sometimes. You might be a little shaky at the beginning, and that's how bands play together. Sometimes the groove might be slightly just eluding everybody that first little section of the song. And it's a balancing act for any musician to determine how much human imperfection you want, because you can keep going, keep doing takes, and it's still human. You know, you're just getting better at it. But I feel like it's good to leave a little bit of that imperfection in there. For me personally, I'm not going to let the first line of a song be shaky. But, you know, I oddly kind of admire somebody that has the balls to do that. Okay, I'm going to get to some fan emails. If you're new to the channel, man, like and subscribe and comment, do all that stuff. I do this once a week, try to do it once a week. Unfortunately, it's probably going to be slowing down because my first and primary purpose is creating riffs and writing songs, and I've got them kind of backing up. So I need to start actually demoing stuff. But I'm still going to try to do this once every couple of weeks. But fair warning, I may take the summer off so I can get some of these songs demoed. I have multiple songs for multiple projects sort of piling up. At the same time, I'm getting like interview requests and stuff like that. And so I'm going to be interviewing some cool people coming up. But yeah, if you're new, I talk about riffs. I usually have an album discussion. This episode, it's 4 or like 11, depending on how you look at it. And then listeners are encouraged to write in bigriffenergy@gmail.com. Questions, ideas for people you want me to interview, suggestions, things like that. We did a giveaway last episode to celebrate 5,000 subscribers. And I heard from Colin. It is Colin, right? Colin with a K. You're making... Okay, so I glanced at this question before I started recording this. I was a little confused at first. I think what you're asking is hypothetical supergroup. Colin says you're making a new band/album. Who are your remaining members currently alive and active? And what type of genre are y'all going to bless? Are you still doing guitar and vocals? # only Big Riff Energy is real. I like it. He always sends that hashtag. I talked about this on another episode. I did like a fantasy one of dead people, and I did like a more realistic one. I think my more realistic one was like me, TJ from Inner Arma on drums, Jeff from High on Fire on bass, Mel from Royal Thunder on vocals, and somebody else. But I got a new one just for you, man, because this is a paid question. I don't know why you did that. Thank you. But I've been listening to a lot more thrash and like proto death metal lately. That's kind of mainly what I'm listening to. So I was thinking along those lines. Tell me this band wouldn't be sick. Brondaler from Mastodon on drums. I'm going to play bass because I want to like get with him and really try to follow that dude. Gary Holt on guitar. Max Cavalera, who I spoke with not that long ago, guitar and vocals, backing vocals. I had Max on lead vocals, and then I thought, you know what? Chuck Billy on lead vocals. So, Braun, drums, me, bass, Gary Holt, guitar, Max, guitar and vocals, Chuck Billy, vocals. You can figure out what the genre is just by the dudes that are involved. That would be fun. I just watched a little thing with Rob Barrett from Cannibal Corpse talking about his little fantasy supergroup. And I think he said Vinny Labella from Exhorder, Kyle from Exhorder on vocals, Steve DiGiorgio, and Gene Hoglan. That would be a sick band too. Love Rob Barrett, man. Leon, another paid ski. And dude, all right. For those of you who are new or unaware, I offer the option to PayPal me $10 and your question goes to the front of the line. The only issue here, guys, is if you put your question in the PayPal message or note or whatever, it's going to get cut off if it's long. So Leon, your thing got cut off. I'll give you a freebie if you want. Hey, Nate, hope you and family are well. Wanted to send in an email for a while, so here it goes. I'm afraid I do not have a question. Predominantly, this email is me seeking absolution. Good word. Until a few months ago, I'd never heard of Alex Halak or his bands Argoslint or Grand Belial's Key. I call him Grandpa Lyle's Key. That's kind of a underground inside joke in the southern heavy metal circuit. After Grandpa Lyle's Key, after the podcast where you address these guys, their music and everything wrong with them, the curiosity got the better of me. I had to give Argoslint a listen. I started with the album Hornets of the Pogrom. I thought it was Pogrom, but I've heard people say Pogrom. I can remember only 2 to 3 times previously in my life hearing music and immediately having such a raw, visceral reaction. I have to just get to the point. I adore this music. Yeah, no shame no shame there, dude. The music is like objectively really fucking good. One song in particular stood out to me, so I found myself listening to it multiple times over the course of a few days. Here lies the problem. By listening to the song so many times, the lyrics, once hidden by the death growl style, started to pop out. I'm confident I do not need to give an example, and I knew what I and your thing cut off. But I mean, I'm pretty sure I know where you're going, man. That guy is a fucking dork. That dude's not scary. Like, I take major issues with the fact that those bands go and play like actual white power stuff. The main guy, it's like there's no easy way to talk about this, but he doesn't qualify. Like, I mean, I don't think most people don't actually qualify because racism is just like a totally illogical thing. The science says we all come from Africa. I did my genealogy thing. I got some African in me. I got all kinds of shit in me. I'm pretty sure that dude has all kinds of shit in him. So it kind of makes no sense that they would go play white power stuff. I'm not sure that that dude even plays shows anymore. He was doing like a food truck with his wife, who's also, I don't think is white, and he got doxxed, and it was this whole fucking thing. But the dude's a dork, man. He's an edgelord fucking dork at the end of the day. He's been totally neutered down to like regular, boring, jack off 9 to 5 type fucking guy. He's harmless. That doesn't mean the lyrics and the message of the bands isn't harmless, because I think that they do enable lots of shithead ways of thinking and enable weak fucking people to latch on to something that's like just not good. All that aside, you know, I spoke about it on the Argosland episode. I'm not a fan of like raping and dismembering people either, but I fucking love Cannibal Corpse, you know. I love the new Fulci that's about to come out, and there's a lot of raping and torturing and shit going on there. You know, it's like horror movie stuff, right? It's not condoning it. It's just creating an atmosphere of horror. So yeah, you don't have to be an advocate of someone's message, especially like, you know, I heard Argos Lint in the back of a van, half asleep, and I sat straight up. I didn't know what the fucking words were. I didn't know who it was. I didn't know what they were saying, what they stood for, anything. Like you said, there's like a visceral reaction. That music's really, really, really good. So who knows? I'm not going to spend my life trying to get into some weird loser virgin dude's head. And you shouldn't either. If you like the music, I guess keep listening to it and try not to think about what they're talking about. But I don't know. Whatever, man. It's metal. It's like, I saw Cannibal Holocaust when I was like 14 years old. So it's hard to disturb me at this point. I don't know. Write me another question, because your shit got cut off. I'm not exactly sure what you're looking for. Marcus, which albums have the best production sound and style to your ears? You mentioned that the assembly line style of Nuclear Blast bothers you. Just to clarify, like, there's all kinds of different engineers and producers and stuff making records for Nuclear Blast, but so it doesn't really have anything to do with the label per se, but it's just so much stuff coming out at that level sounds exactly the same, because they're probably using the same samples to replace the drums. They're quantizing everything. They're probably using the same amp modelers or amps or techniques or modern shit. Like, what's the most modern, cleanest possible stuff? Yeah, brick wall compression, everything snapped to a grid, even tuning on clean vocals. That shit has, dude, you'd be surprised who tunes their vocals on records. You'd be shocked. That shit has turned me off some otherwise riff savvy bands, and it sucks. I'd love to hear your list of the opposite. Dynamic in the room sounds with character and grit. For my money, High on Fire's Blessed Black Wings is the best example of this approach to engineering and mixing. And after your Albini episode, I'd have to imagine you agree. Any other recommendations and shout outs are always appreciated. Yeah, dude, Blessed Black Wings sounds insane. got that record when it came out, and I was struck by the production even as a young ass kid that didn't know anything about production. I like Death Is His Communion too. I think Indino did that one, if I'm not mistaken. Or either Albini or Jack Indino, I can't remember. But those are the two best sounding High on Fire records to me. My favorite sounding metal, I'm going to talk about metal, because if I open this up to whatever, it's going to be like Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, Led Zeppelin, Houses of the Holy, non-metal music by and large has better production than metal music, because the more money you put into something, the better the production is for my taste. I like underground necro sounding shit too, but it's got to be human but sound good. Oddly enough, my favorite sounding metal record is Typo Negative October Rust, which is weird because it's fake drums. The bass guitar tone is terrible. There's no bass in it. The guitar tone is god awful. It's just like fuzzed out, chorused out like nails on a chalkboard. But somehow when you put it all together, to me, that's like the dark side of the moon of metal. And according to a buddy who worked at Roadrunner, that's kind of what they were going for. Shout out to Champ. I'm sure you're listening, bro. October Rust is the best sounding metal album ever to me. It's such a dense, layered production with so much shit going on that it's got infinite replay value. You can listen to it. I've been listening to it since I was a kid, and when I was a kid, I listened to it every day for like a year straight, and I'll still put it on today and hear something new. A lot of my favorite records from growing up, I can't listen to them anymore, but that one just sounds new every time. The absolute standard for metal production, whether you like it or not, the Black Album, Metallica Black Album. That's like the ultimate, all expenses, huge budget, no limitations to anything that you want to do approach, right? So the Black Album is a standard for metal. A lot of Ghost's stuff is similar in that regard, bordering on unlimited resources and time. Some of their records sound great. Popestar EP sounds insane. Prequelle sounds insane. That's as good a production as you're going to get in rock or metal. I want to mention Neurosis, Sun That Never Sets, Steve Albini. There's something very, very special about the sound of that record. Favorite sounding Neurosis record. I want to shout out Zeus, who we've worked with. The record that really drove the nail in the coffin for me, where I was like, we have to work with him. He's done a ton of great shit. Look up Zeus, man. Christopher Harris, Municipal Waste, Rob Zombie, Shadows Fall, you name it. Overkill. Crowbar, Sever the Wicked Hand is the record that I love everything Zeus has done, the sound of it and everything. But something about Crowbar, Sever the Wicked Hand, to me, that's their best sounding record. It's one of my favorite records as far as the music too. But dude, A-B that with some other similar stuff and you will be amazed. Martin Birch, got to talk about him. So I'll say Iron Maiden, Somewhere in Time. A lot of people prefer Peace of Mind. I know Zeus prefers Peace of Mind. The bass is a little darker, meaning the bass guitar. Like usually his shit is like clicky and clunky and weird, kind of slappy sounding. And Peace of Mind, it's like way more reined in, not like popping out and as obnoxious as it could be. Another Martin Birch one, Mob Rules, Black Sabbath with Dio. That to me that's a top 5 production for me. The drums especially. Love Danzig 2. Dark Throne, Old Star, which my friend Sanford mixed. The thing I like about that one is it's like Dark Throne has to sound like a nasty, scary garage band playing in a basement. Meanwhile, Sanford is like highly trained, highly experienced, high fidelity type of mixing guy. And they found a perfect balance between those two things. Like you can sound crusty and nasty and necro and like a basement thing, and also sound really, really good and heavy. That's my favorite sounding Darkthrone record by far. And I think that is a standard for like making something nasty, but clear, you know, high def. We got to talk about Blackwater Park, Opeth. The dude from whatever. Steven Wilson, is that his name? Is it the dude from Porcupine Tree? Tom Draper would know. He's probably screaming right now. Yeah, Blackwater Park. Another sort of like Dark Side of the Moon of metal type of approach. And I want to shout out Hallas, Isle of Wisdom, which I mentioned earlier. Very organic sounding, old school, but not too contrived in like an old school retro kind of way. Still sounds like it came out today, but it could have come out in the 70s also. Okay, next question. I got a few more. Thanks for sticking with me, guys. Ivan from Russia. Hell yeah, man. One of the coolest times of my life was going over to Russia with Gatecreeper. I'll never forget it. We played in Moscow and St. Petersburg. I loved it. Everybody was very nice. Hi there. My name's Ivan from Russia, and I want to also know who were the coolest bands you got to perform on the same stage to you. Thanks. Crowbar, short answer. Crowbar is one of my favorite bands ever, and it was one of those things where you hope they're going to be cool people, and you meet them, and they're awesome. They treated us like family, and yeah, Crowbar, man. We technically played at the same festival as Metallica, but it was two different stages. We technically played at the same festival as Iron Maiden, but it was two different stages. So as far as sharing the same stage, yeah, it's got to be Crowbar. Or, you know, The Obsessed, Wino. Wino is an absolute hero. I would maybe throw High on Fire in there also. But Crowbar, short answer. Devin from Lund. Hey, Nate, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for praising our song Ancient Steel. I'm so glad you enjoy it, and the fact that you mentioned it on your show is beyond amazing. Thank you. We just released another new song today. Hope you dig it. Lund709.bandcamp.com. Yeah, a couple episodes ago, I was praising this song. Don't mention it, dude. You don't have to thank me. If your song sucked, I wouldn't have said anything about it on here. Thank you for making cool music. And you know what? It's kind of the perfect episode for the Lund shout out. If you like Ghost, especially the early stuff, I think you will you'll be a fan of Lund, Lund from Canada. Old school proto hard rock / Thin Lizzy worship, right? When you say Thin Lizzy, Ashbury, a little bit of Ashbury in there. I'm sure you're familiar with those dudes. But yeah, no problem. Guys, send me stuff. If I like it, I'll shout it out. If I don't, I'm sorry. But I keep it real on here. Sydney. Oh, this is a good one. Hello, Mr. Garrett. My name... Jesus. Don't call me Mr. Garrett. Okay, I feel weird reading shit like this, just for the record. I'm never going to feel like not awkward reading this sort of stuff, but Sydney, since you sent me this, I'm assuming you want me to read it, so I'm going to read it. My name is Sydney. I am 22 and I'm from Arizona, and I hope to be a guitarist in a band like you. I have been here since the first episode and I became a fan ever since. This probably sounds cheesy, but your music is just so damn awesome. So many beautiful riffs while still being badass and heavy. You truly are talented and have become one of my favorite guitarists ever. Your music has gotten me through some tough and struggling moments, so thank you for helping me stay sane. It's also great for working out and lifting. Your music goes well with my motto, heavy riffing and heavy lifting. That's a good one. I'm going to start using that. I even got my dad to like one of your songs. Dads like us, man. It was Forge Your Future, which is one of my personal favorites. I also enjoy the podcast because I feel like we share similar opinions on music, which I find cool because I love the relatability factor with the artists and fans. But also thank you for giving me more Big Riff energy recommendations to expand my musical horizons. Going a little off track, I was at the Gatecreeper 10-year anniversary show in Mesa. Got to meet your bassist, Sonny. I'll attach the picture. Yeah, he texted us and was very excited to meet a fan in the wild. We call it being recognized. That made my night, and I definitely fangirled a little bit. So to keep it short and sweet, thank you for the cool riffs, keeping me motivated with my guitar, being a part of my musical and big riff journey. I attached my TikTok videos for the 5K contest for you in the podcast to enjoy, putting up a video of Sydney playing Forge Your Future, crushing it, and the other video playing Marzana, which is old shit. Not a lot of people know about that one. But I like that Marzana riff a lot, and you're playing it like exactly right. It's crazy. Hope to see you play in AZ soon from a forever fan, Sydney. It's cool. Thank you. Like I said, I'm awkward. Feel weird reading this sort of shit, but this is what it's all about. I appreciate it, and this is why I write riffs and write songs and make music to give to people what was given to me by Black Sabbath and bands like that. You said something in here that was more accurate than you realize, and that's insightful, more insightful than you realize. You said, beautiful riffs while still being badass and heavy. When I was trying to figure out what Spirit Adrift was, I realized that one of the key defining factors is that the riffs are equally pretty and heavy. So like 50% pretty, 50% heavy or evil at the same time. And that's kind of a tricky thing to do. And I think that comes from like my first two loves as far as subgenre being like first wave of thrash metal, early 80s thrash, and first wave of doom metal, early 80s doom. Like, what do those two things have in common? And a lot of that doom metal stuff is kind of pretty, guitar harmonies and stuff like that. But my code phrase for writing a riff is like pretty heavy, meaning it's like beautiful and heavy, or like pretty evil, meaning it's somehow kind of pretty and hopeful, but also like scary and evil. And melancholy is like a kind of a thing to shoot for. I've talked to John from Baroness about that a little bit. Like it's hard to capture melancholy in a sound, but that's sort of like the most magical thing you can do. So that's the goal. That's the goal. But I'm impressed that you honed in on that. Yeah, I appreciate it. That means a lot. Sydney is also asking about workout tips. I don't know, man. I'm really not an authority there. I worked out a lot when I was younger, like high school and stuff. And then I stopped for a long time. I was just partying, and that was it. And then it was Cannibal Corpse's road crew that sort of got me back into it. And they were doing like heavy like deadlifts and squats and shit like that. Super heavy. I don't honestly recommend that. You're 22, I'm 36. In 14 years, you're going to be like, why the fuck did I do so many deadlifts? Yeah, it'll, I just read Schwarzenegger's book. He's in his 70s, and he talked about getting older and doing lighter weight, whatever you can do for 15 reps. And on the 15th rep, he does what I think he's refers to as like a isometric hold or something like that. But I've sort of adopted that lately, just like lighter weight, which is not like super light, but where I can barely do like 12 or 15 reps. I run a lot more. Like, it kind of depends on what my goals are. If I'm gearing up for a tour, it's all core and running. And honestly, like, even doing like kettlebell swings and squats and deadlifts, I've never seen more immediate results on like the posterior chain and the lower half of my body than when I started running like 3-4 miles a day, every other day on incline and decline, like trail running. Started doing 3 miles, 4 miles, once a day or once every few days if I have stuff going on. And that, you're getting cardio and you're strengthening, your lower torso. Beyond that, right now it's like I try to throw like 100 kicks on a bag each leg every day if I can, and that's mainly just to like open up the hips and stuff like that. Like I said, getting older, I can't really force myself to do yoga, so I just kick a bag instead, and it's like, you know, opening up stiff ass old dude hips. What else? Incline chest press. I don't do flat bench anymore or anything like that. It fucks up your shoulders. Body weight stuff, pull-ups. Do 30 push-ups the second I wake up. I think I saw a thing with like some Russian mobster about how to start your day. And so I started doing 30 push-ups like literally the second I wake up, sort of like focusing my mental state for the day and everything. So yeah, it just depends on what you want to do. I'm no expert. I'm kind of like free form with it. I change my approach depending on how I'm feeling, but whatever makes you feel good and whatever's not going to hurt you. That's on a long enough timeline, you realize, okay, let me just do what's not going to hurt me and what's going to improve my quality of life. Sorry if that was boring to the non-workout people, but there you go. What else, man? Yeah, that's pretty much it. I got an interview coming up soon, potentially a couple of interviews. But as I said, unfortunately, I'm probably going to have to slow down the output here just because the riffs are starting to stack up and I need to get them documented. I'm not afraid I'm going to lose them. You know, the best riffs just, you don't even have to record them. You know, I remember reading an interview with Tony Iommi about like, yeah, I have hundreds of tapes worth of riffs, but I found that the best ones, I don't even have to listen back to them. They're just there. Once you discover it, you don't forget it. But that being said, I need to start sort of chipping away and turning these into actual songs. And I don't know. I'll see you when I see you. There's going to be an interview coming out very soon. So stay tuned for that. And write me, bigriffenergy@gmail.com. Later.
Riff.